The most profound example we find of Jesus serving was his last encounter with his closest followers prior to the crucifixion. Jesus knew he would be arrested that night, and then the next day he'd be put to death. What he did that evening in the upper room overturned a lie that had plagued humanity since the Garden of Eden. The lie that says if you want to be blessed, look out for yourself before anyone else. Jesus knew his position and power. He knew that God had put all things under his authority. And yet what he did that evening, he set aside his crown for an apron. The one who sat in the highest position stooped down to serve. So far, we've talked about the first 3 ways to love your neighbor and change the world. Begin with prayer, listen, and eat. In this chapter, we talk about the 4th blessed practice, and that is to serve. Jesus told us pointedly, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to, serve. He modeled for us that once you begin with prayer, listen, and eat with someone, there's a good chance that by then you'll have discovered how you can best serve the person that God is asking you to bless. John, Jesus' closest friend and disciple, records the scene this way. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Okay, so Jesus here is God in the flesh, the maker and sustainer of everything, the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. There is no one higher, no one with more power. And even those in the room who didn't fully understand his cosmic authority would still have known him as a highly respected teacher and rabbi. And keep in mind that this was an honor and shame culture. So protecting your reputation and your dignity was critically important. Washing feet, that was the job of a servant. Washing feet in public, that would be a great way to tank your honor score. So no one would risk that. That's why Peter responds to Jesus by saying, no, you shall never wash my feet. And then Jesus answered, well, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Then, Lord, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. You see, Peter didn't realize what Jesus was doing. In just a few hours, Jesus would choose to be stripped and humiliated. His crown again would be set aside, this time for a cross. He would take on the full weight of our sin and wash us once and for all with his grace so that we could be clean forever and restored to a right relationship with God. Jesus washes feet. And what I want to drive home here is this. What Jesus did in the upper room the night before his crucifixion was not just a kind gesture. It was meant to catalyze a movement. The story continues. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Then he says this. He says, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed. There's that word, right? You will be blessed if you do them. Jesus' message is simple. It's now our turn to serve the way he served. It's your turn to set aside your crown for an apron. We live in a world that believes the higher you rise and the more power and wealth you accumulate, the more leverage you have to get others to serve you, right? But see, Jesus takes that whole idea and says, no, here's what it really looks like to bless the world, okay? You serve. So let me ask you, what do you need to put down to bless someone by serving them? What is your crown? Is it your time, your pride, your convenience? What do you need to give up in order to share the love of Jesus with someone in this way? What would it look like for you to put down your crown and put on an apron where you live, in your neighborhood, in your apartment or condo building? What would it look like for you to put down your crown and put on an apron at home? How about with your spouse, your children, your roommate? You see, these everyday ways to love your neighbor and change the world aren't just for, somebody out there somewhere. No, you can start with the people you interact with every single day. And I'm convinced of this. When you begin with prayer, listen, and share meals with people, more opportunities to serve than you can imagine will present themselves. And eventually, someone might even ask you what makes you different or why you serve the way you do. And then you can put into practice this last, fifth, final blessed practice. We'll talk about that in the next chapter.